Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. An underwhelming Abu Dhabi Grand Prix concludes with Max Verstappen winning his 15th race of the season, with retirements for both Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton in their final race alongside Sebastian Vettel. Mercedes have explained what went wrong with Hamilton's car, but also Hamilton gives his thoughts on the W13 and the fact that he practically never wants to see it again. Hit the like button if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new as always. Unfortunately, we didn't get a send-off for Vettel quite like this because Alonso and Hamilton couldn't even do donuts with Seb on the final grid. But indeed, Alonso's car did blow up as it was expected. This was what happened into turn 1. Hamilton got a great start ahead of Carlos Sainz, but going down into kind of the chicane here, there was another very reminiscent incident of last year. You know, Hamilton got the good start against Verstappen in 2021. Verstappen then dived down the inside on him into the chicane, and Hamilton was pushed wide. Same happens here. Hamilton goes off the track, and there was some debate whether, okay, he went off the track, gained an advantage. Did Sainz push him off? In the end, they didn't really do anything about it, but Mercedes decided to give the place back in the end. Now, this was probably the key moment here where Hamilton goes over this sausage curb, and I really don't know why they insist on sausage curbs existing. All they do is fly the cars up into the air like this. Can't have been good for Hamilton's back, which took a beating earlier in the season thanks to the W13, and then it slams down here again, like, you know, he just bounces over the curb and the car goes skywards, and probably did some sort of damage. That seems like it was the case, because there are a few laps after this, Hamilton was struggling with pace for probably the next 15 laps. Then it miraculously came back again, the pace, but then at the end of the race the car just died, and probably it was something to do with this particular moment. So yeah, these sausage curbs have got to go. I don't really see what benefit they add, and we've seen many instances, this is just one from a couple of years ago now, in Monza I think, where this guy hit the sausage curb and just flew into the sky and into the barriers. This is a crazy one. There's been a few others just like this, and yeah, like I think many people have said before that sausage curbs have got to go, and this is arguably one more example. It's trying to prevent cars going off track deliberately, and you're going to get punished if you do, but in this case it's like, well, nothing really Hamilton could have done about this. So eventually Hamilton is asked by his team to let Sainz back through, even though Hamilton at that point was pretty close to Leclerc, and then Hamilton gets Sainz back on the next lap, so it looked like Mercedes at that point had the pace they needed. You can see Russell getting past Norris here in the background, but quickly after that the Mercedes pace dropped away, or certainly Hamilton's pace, and Sainz got past him, Russell got past him, and he was reporting that, you know, he's losing power, what's going on, maybe the floor of the car's broken. That's then what he said afterwards, like, the floor's probably broken. Makes sense given this circumstance. But as the race progressed, there was an interesting period where after the first pit stops, Hamilton was about 5 seconds back on George Russell and closed that gap in about 15 laps. So Hamilton had much faster pace than Russell for a good stint of the race. So these issues seemingly went away, but then, you know, at the end of the race, we obviously saw what happened, and we'll see more details here in a second. So Verstappen pitted a little bit late onto the hard tyres. There was a question, could the teams go to the end on one stop? And it seemed like the one stop was viable, but it depended very much indeed on tyre wear, and we thought Ferrari might be struggling with that. Russell was looking good, but then he got a 5-second penalty because his team released him into the path of Norris, so that wasn't ideal for his race. Didn't really matter in the end. And even Perez with some quite spicy words over the radio at some point, saying he's being held up by Max, because at this point Perez was a couple of seconds behind Verstappen, Leclerc was closing in, and he was like, look, Max, speed up a bit, I've got you more pace than you. And it probably wasn't the case, and Verstappen was just absolutely chilling at the front of the Grand Prix. And then unfortunately, again, I've lost count honestly of the amount of times that Alonso's car's blown up this season. This was yet another example. Pulls into the pits, retirement, water leak issue this was for the Alpine. They bring him in, and yeah, he's just looking forward to next year at this point, and you can't exactly blame him, right? And yeah, suspected water leak. Some of the replies, honestly, the replies to these Alpine tweets, if you look at the hidden replies, I can't click on it because the video will get instantly demonetized. Like, it's mad some of the stuff you see in there. And thankfully, someone decided to make the race a little bit interesting in deciding to pit Perez for a second time. There was a debate here. Is it better to do the two-stop? Is the one-stop viable? And Red Bull decided that pitting Perez was the way to go, but he would have to overturn about an 18-second deficit to Leclerc, and they thought he would have enough laps to do that. Now, you know, of course, yeah, likely we'll have to pit again Leclerc, but in the end they were like, well, look, if we pit now, we're going to get undercut by Perez. We might as well try and make it work to the end of the race, and fantastic job by Leclerc. So yeah, about 15 seconds gap with 20 laps to go. It looked like, okay, a second lap, you can make that happen. But yeah, turned out Leclerc did a brilliant job. Now, Hamilton was like, look, guys, I'm on this two-stop strategy here, probably. Don't leave me on the one-stop because I'll get eaten up towards the end of the race and the tyres will go off. The team thought, you know what, let's go for it anyway, leave him out on the one-stop. Now, in fairness, had they pitted Hamilton, he would have come out probably ahead of Russell if they'd have pitted at a similar time, because Russell had to take the 5-second penalty in his second stop. And Hamilton probably would still have lost to Sainz anyway, so I guess by going for the one-stop, they were gambling here that Hamilton could effectively do a Leclerc and hold on for P4, whereas if they pitted, they were probably just securing P5, and probably if Hamilton's car lasted to the end of the race, Sainz would have got him, and then Russell probably would have not been close enough to get him, so it probably would have been P5 anyway. So kind of understand what Mercedes did. There was a brief instant where I thought we might actually see a safety car here, because Mick Schumacher got a bit too eager trying to take out Nicholas Latifi, and that they both went spinning round. So I thought it could be a classic Latifi moment for his final Grand Prix. And even at this point, I felt kind of bad for Vettel, because at this point he's P11 here. Stroll on the 2-stop gets him. Vettel on that 1-stop. He lost so much time in the first stint trying to hold on to the mediums. Arguably, they could have just gone to the hards a bit earlier than they did. Would have lost less time. And look, it wasn't a great strategy. He was obviously frustrated with it, thinking at this point there was no points to be attained. But thankfully, Hamilton did him and Leclerc a favour. So before this moment happened here, Hamilton was defending against Perez, did what Perez did to Hamilton last year, held him up for a lap or two, and that probably made the difference, honestly, that Hamilton defence on Perez, for Perez not getting P2 in this year's Drivers' Championship. But then his car breaks. I've lost shifts, and they immediately say on the radio, yeah, hydraulic issue, lost hydraulic pressure, the car stopped working. He could make it back to the pits, but that was about it. So he couldn't change gear or anything, and yeah, told him to retire the car. So lap 55, 3 laps from the end of the race, Hamilton's car has had enough, right? And that's the first mechanical failure that Mercedes have had all season, and the first mechanical failure that Hamilton has had since, I think, maybe 4 years ago or something was the last time that Hamilton had an actual mechanical failure. Now, this you could argue was caused by what happened at the start of the race. It might just have been like, you know, one-off failure here. And Hamilton's final race of the season, his final chance to kind of break the duck of wins this year, ends in a retirement in the garage in unexpected circumstances. Even that meant that Sainz got P5 in the drivers ahead of, well, Hamilton that would have had P5 pretty much regardless of what happened for the rest of this race. So definitely tough scenes. Wanted to show you guys this interview as well with Toto Wolff here, where he basically says to Hamilton, like, look, it kind of sums up our season, but next year they believe most certainly that they're back in business.
I mean, that was really not good. All the mistakes you can make, a car that was not at the pace it should have been, third quickest today, and yeah, one breaking down and the other one running out of tires. Yeah, it's a precise summary of the season, and here we are.
Yeah, was Brazil a kind of a false light in a sense? I mean, it's good that you won one, but did it give you a bit of confidence coming here? Was this a bit of a surprise, or did you expect to have the pace on the Ferraris like it showed in the first stint? You looked to have the pace on them in the first stint.
Yeah, I think we cooked the tires in the first few laps. We attacked strong. The car seemed to be really good, and then the front right just gave up. So maybe that's something we should have predicted. But you know, that is the consequence. I think we knew that Abu Dhabi is going to be a difficult one from the car, so at least the correlation is good. And Brazil was just spectacular, dominating from the beginning to the end, and with a 1 and 2, and that at least we ticked the box with a race win.
Well, as I say, W13 might not be remembered kindly. That doesn't do anything away from the amount of effort shown by every single person on the race team and every single person, I imagine, in Brackley and Brixworth. They know what is coming next year. Tell the people at home what is coming next year.
First of all, we're going to put these cars in reception in Brackley and in Brixworth to remind us every single day how difficult it can be. But thank you everyone who is watching Sky today in HPP and in MGP. This is a character-building season, not a blip for a race, but a full season. But you keep pushing so hard. The engine came along really well, and I'm proud of what we achieved there. And on the chassis side, there were more bad moments than good ones, but the good ones were spectacular. Like a week ago, it made us feel how good it can be, and now we're just pushing forward for next year. It's raw. It's bad, and it's okay to feel like this, but next year we are back.
Describing it as a character-building season, not a blip for a race, but a full season, kept pushing hard. The engine came along well. The chassis side, there had some spectacular moments few and far between, certainly in Brazil, but next year we are back, he reckons. Speaking, of course, on what was happening at the front of the grid for the rest of the races, so Verstappen won. Coming, this guy was just chilling the whole race, man. I wonder how much more pace Verstappen had in hands had he, well, been required to use it. Vettel had to do the donuts on his own, which I thought was kind of sad, to be honest, to finish things out here. But also there was this moment. So not only did Perez get held up by Hamilton, but he also got held up by Gasly and I think maybe Albon. They were having a bit of a battle here. And then Perez was not happy because, of course, Gasly, AlphaTauri, Red Bull sister team, you'd have thought he might have been a bit more lenient here to Perez, knowing the fight that he was in. But clearly Gasly just doesn't care anymore. It's like, get me out of AlphaTauri, I'm going to Alpine. I don't care about Red Bull anymore. Like, I don't care about this system. Whereas Gasly would usually, you know, if there was a situation which required it, give way to Verstappen and Perez rather easily in the past. Wasn't the case here, and arguably again cost Perez P2. In the end, Leclerc, brilliant drive to come home in second. That secures second for Ferrari. Alfa Romeo hang on to P6. Aston Martin tied them in points, but Alfa Romeo had a P5 back in Imola with Bottas, and that was enough on countback to get them that P6 at the end of the day. And yeah, these were the comments by Hamilton yesterday before the Grand Prix even began, saying, I'm looking forward to the end of Tuesday, which is for a tyre test, where it's the last time I have to drive this thing, and I don't ever plan to drive this one again. Not one of the cars I have in my contract. And I mean, yeah, as he says, like at the bottom here, well, Toto Wolff says, this car will always have a special place in our collection right at the back. So yeah, I guess that kind of sums up their season, to be honest. Quick note on the porpoising thing, because yesterday we talked about the porpoising issue that Mercedes seem to have coming back. And yeah, Russell reckoned that actually these changes that the FIA are bringing in next year with the raised leading edge of the floor by 5mm will be some good changes to prevent porpoising being a thing, because apparently they've kind of dealt with it at most circuits, but at certain circuits with high-speed corners, the porpoising during the corners still exists to a certain degree, and apparently Toto Wolff reckons it's a track characteristic, but other teams were also suffering, therefore they had to raise the ride heights, and it took away some of their performance they'd had for the last couple of races. So that's going to do it for today and for this season. Thought this was lovely for Seb Vettel's final race here, when this image comes up on his dash here for Aston Martin right at the end of the race. These were the final standings then all across the board. So yeah, it was you know, Perez, Russell, Leclerc obviously hangs on to P2, 3-point gap in it at the end of the day. So even if Verstappen had given Perez the extra couple of points last week, would not quite have been enough regardless. But you could argue that maybe Red Bull messed up their strategy a bit, or didn't expect Leclerc and Ferrari to put together quite a drive that he managed. And just to say this, going into next season, we're about 100 days away from the Bahrain Grand Prix 2023, and well, the last 6 seasons now in a row, the driver that's won the season opener has finished second in the Drivers' Championship. So whoever you want to win next year, make sure they don't win the Bahrain Grand Prix. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.